Podcast 40, Frank and David take you to the Blue Ridge Mountains, where they're camping with their children at Big Meadow Campground.
I'm David.
I'm Frank.
And we're Virginia Trekkers. And we're here today in the Blue Ridge Mountain region of Virginia, right along Skyline Drive and Big Meadow Campground.
And Big Meadows is in Shenandoah National Park, and this place is absolutely beautiful. All kinds of wildlife, mountains, and really cool waterfalls. So if you're ready to see that really cool stuff, let's go trekking!
So why is there a place called Big Meadow right in the middle of the mountains?
And that's kind of a strange name for right in the middle of the Blue Ridge Mountains. But here it is, there is a meadow right here at the top of the mountains. And actually this meadow was man-made. They believe maybe the Indians made this meadow. They burned off all the trees that would grow here so that they had grazing land for the animals that they hunted, like the bison. There were bison, woodland bison that lived here. And if they hadn't burned off, and they continue to burn off the trees here, because if they didn't do that, the trees would just keep growing back and this would become a woods.
All right, we've just come off the meadow just a little bit, and the area that you see around me is what it would look like if the National Park Service didn't keep the meadow open. And I'm standing in the foundation of a home. Before Shenandoah National Park was founded, people lived in the mountains. They were called mountain people. And you can see that the foundation here, you can see that this would be one of the walls. There's another wall here, and it goes back here quite a ways. Believe it or not, this house is not very big, and there were 11 kids living in this house. And it's the funny stories that we heard about the Weekly family is Mrs. Weekly was known for her cooking. So people that came up out of the valley over here, across the mountain, would stay here at her house, get a good meal in their belly, and then go down the other side of the mountain. Got to remember, we didn't have airplanes and really fast cars back then, so it took them quite a while to get over the mountain. They did farming here. This area was a whole lot more open, and they were actually one of the few people that were allowed to live out their lives here in Shenandoah National Park. And the family, Mr. and Mrs. Weekly, are buried right down the road.
The farms in Shenandoah National Park are gone now, but there's still plenty of food available if you look carefully.
Now, do y'all recognize these plants? They're blueberries and blackberries, and they're growing wild here in the meadow. And the Indians would gather these as well as food, and the early settlers who lived here. And they sure are tasty. Now, you remember, you shouldn't eat any kind of berry that you find in the woods because you don't know what it is, but I know these are blueberries, so I know they're safe to eat. And nothing like a wild blueberry.
All right, so this stake right here marks part of an archaeological site, and you can see there's a bunch of stakes all over the place. Shenandoah National Park and the Skyline Drive were built by a bunch of guys that are known as the CCC boys. And that stands for the Civilian Conservation Corps. And to be a CCC boy, you had to be 18 to 24 years old and single. They didn't want you running home back to your girlfriend or your wife. So you had to be single and you had to work up here. You would come up here, and this was the camp. This is camp number 2. You'd stay up here for 6 months. But these boys came up here and they worked really, really hard. They built the road mostly by hand, using pickaxes and shovels. If you were to come up here, you'd see walls with beautiful overlooks. Maybe we can show you some of those before the end of the video. All of those areas were built by the CCC boys.
Besides the remains of old buildings and lots of cool plants, there's also plenty of wildlife to be seen at Shenandoah National Park, especially deer.
Behind us you see a mama and one little baby fawn. Looks just like Bambi, but you'll notice that the mom's got a solid color on her, and the baby's got some spots, and the baby's got the spots. It's a physical adaptation, and it's camouflage, and it helps them hide in the brush a little bit better from predators like mountain lions, bobcats, bears. Pretty cute.
But one of the main attractions of Shenandoah National Park is the views that you can get along Skyline Drive.
And we're going to take you along the Skyline Drive. It's a road that goes right along the top of the Blue Ridge Mountains. It's going to be beautiful. We're going to see some waterfalls. Enjoy the trip. Where are you going, Sarah?
Over here.
Why?
Here you can see the Blue Ridge Mountains, and this yellow line, that's Skyline Drive. It goes along the ridge of the mountains, and there's many beautiful overlooks along the way.
Here we are way on top of the Blue Ridge Mountains, and you can see the Blue Ridge Mountains is basically just one ridge of mountains, and then down there is the valley, the Shenandoah Valley, the Valley and Ridge region. Here you can see why the Blue Ridge Mountains are called the Blue Ridge Mountains, because they look blue in all the haze. The Appalachian Mountains are old, rounded mountains. So here you can see very old rock.
And another fact that you know about the Blue Ridge Mountains is that it's the source of many rivers. So there's plenty of waterfalls to see.
We've made it to the bottom of Dark Hollow Falls. You see it right here behind us. It's one of the tallest waterfalls in Shenandoah, and it's a total of 70 feet. Once you go all the way from the top down here to the bottom. And water runs downhill, and at the top of this hill is the Big Meadow where we went before. All the water that ends up in the Big Meadow pours straight down the hill here in the Dark Hollow Falls.
But one of the coolest things we saw was on the road just outside the waterfalls.
All right, right behind us you see black bears. That's what everybody that comes to Shenandoah is looking for. And there's a cub, and then there's Big Mama right up there on the hill. Pretty cool.
Later that day we took a hike up into the mountains. We didn't see any more bear, but we saw some beautiful sights.
All right, the view up here is absolutely amazing. I can see 3 regions of Virginia. Right here on my left is the Piedmont region. You can see it's fairly flat with low hills. And then of course right now I'm in the Blue Ridge Mountain region, and you can see all the ridges and mountains behind me. And then over here on my right is the Valley and Ridge region, and you can see how there's valleys and ridges. Absolutely beautiful.
And there's a really, really old mountain back here, and it's called Old Rag. And you can see its bare face is sticking out over there, and that mountain has some of the oldest rocks in the United States right on the very top of it. That's a really challenging hike that I would love for the trekkers to do. Fonzo and Brad, are you listening? Old Rag. Let's do it. All right, we've made it to the end of another podcast and another end to a camping trip. Cluf's getting ready to head back to Richmond tonight. My crew's gonna stay here another night. But we've made it to the top of Hawksbill Mountain, which is the highest point in Shenandoah, and it's over 4,000 feet straight up in the air.
We hope you've enjoyed your trek with us to the Blue Ridge Mountains. Check out more podcasts at virginiatrekkers.com.
On my way back to Richmond, I stopped by the VDOT Workers Memorial along I-64.
Hey boys and girls, you may not know this, but to build the beautiful roads in Virginia like Skyline Drive that we were just on, some workers gave their lives. And so this memorial along I-64 remembers those people who gave their lives building these beautiful roads of Virginia.